From a movie that nearly bankrupted Mel Brooks to a desert shoot delayed by rain, Solarbabies is packed with bizarre production disasters, bizarre casting connections, and one of cinema's strangest pitches involving a slideshow with random kids. Behind this roller-skating post-apocalyptic flop lies a treasure trove of Hollywood madness you never knew existed. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Solarbabies. Fact 1. Mel Brooks nearly went bankrupt. Mel Brooks, the legendary comedy director behind Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, took one of the biggest financial risks of his career with Solarbabies, and it almost destroyed him. Brooks didn't just produce the film through his production company. He invested $9 million of his own personal money into the project, which was an enormous sum in the mid-1980s. To make matters even more dramatic, he actually took out a second mortgage on his house to help finance the production when costs started spiraling out of control. The original budget for Solarbabies was supposed to be around $5 million, which was already substantial for a science fiction film at that time, but as production continued in Spain, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The budget kept climbing higher and higher, eventually ballooning to over $25 million, which was 5 times the original estimate. For context, that's roughly equivalent to $60 million in today's money when you adjust for inflation. Brooks was literally betting his personal fortune and his home on this roller-skating post-apocalyptic adventure film, and as the bills kept piling up, he faced the very real possibility of losing everything he had worked for throughout his entire career. The situation became so dire that industry insiders were genuinely worried about whether Brooks would recover financially if the film flopped. His wife, actress Anne Bancroft, reportedly expressed serious concerns about the mounting debt. This wasn't just a bad investment, it was a potential financial catastrophe that threatened to bankrupt one of Hollywood's most successful comedy filmmakers. Fact 2. The director was fired before filming. The behind-the-scenes drama on Solarbabies started before a single frame was ever shot, with a director swap that set the tone for the entire troubled production. Douglas Anthony Metrov was the screenwriter who originally conceived the story of orphaned teenagers roller skating through a dystopian desert wasteland, and Mel Brooks initially planned to let him direct his own screenplay, which would have been Metrov's first feature film as a director. However, as the budget kept increasing and the scope of the production grew more ambitious, Brooks started having second thoughts about entrusting such an expensive project to someone with zero experience directing major motion pictures. The studio executives and financial backers also expressed concerns about giving a first-time director control over what had become a massive $25 million production with complicated special effects, large-scale action sequences, and a cast of young actors who needed experienced guidance. Brooks made the difficult decision to replace Metrov before filming began, bringing in Alan Johnson to take over the director's chair. Johnson was primarily known as a choreographer who had worked on several of Brooks' previous films, and he had only directed one feature film before Solarbabies, Brooks' 1983 remake of To Be or Not to Be. While Johnson had experience staging musical numbers and movement sequences, which theoretically made him a good fit for a movie featuring extensive roller skating choreography, he was still relatively inexperienced with the technical demands of science fiction filmmaking. Metrov remained involved with the production as a writer, but losing the director position on his own screenplay must have been a devastating blow that foreshadowed all the problems to come. Fact 3. Desert filming delayed by rain. One of the most ironic disasters during the Solarbabies production happened when Mother Nature decided to play a cruel joke on the filmmakers. The entire premise of the movie revolves around a post-apocalyptic future where water has become the most precious resource on Earth, with the planet transformed into an endless desert wasteland controlled by a totalitarian regime that hoards all the remaining water. To capture this barren, sun-scorched landscape, the production team chose to film in the Almeria region of southern Spain, which is known for having one of the driest climates in all of Europe and had been used as a filming location for countless westerns and desert scenes over the years. The crew arrived in Spain expecting perfect weather conditions with endless sunny days and not a cloud in sight, which would have been ideal for maintaining continuity throughout the shoot. Instead, they encountered something that locals said hadn't happened in decades. Weeks of heavy, sustained rainfall that turned the arid desert into a muddy mess. The production was forced to shut down repeatedly as they waited for the rain to stop and the ground to dry out enough for filming to resume. Equipment got stuck in the mud, outdoor sets were damaged by the downpour, and the scheduling delays added even more costs to a budget that was already spiraling out of control. The cast and crew were stuck waiting around in hotels, burning through money while accomplishing nothing. The supreme irony wasn't lost on anyone involved. They were trying to make a movie about the scarcity of water in a world dying of thirst, and they couldn't film because there was too much water falling from the sky. Fact 4. Brooks flew to set to threaten cast. The production problems on Solarbabies went far beyond weather delays and budget overruns. There were also serious conflicts between the director and the cast that threatened to derail the entire project. Alan Johnson, who had been brought in to replace the original writer-director, was having major difficulties working with the young ensemble cast, which included Jason Patric, Jami Gertz, Lucas Haas, and several other teenage actors. The exact nature of the disagreements has never been fully detailed publicly, but reports from the set indicated that there were constant arguments about how scenes should be played, with Johnson and the actors unable to find common ground on the characters or the tone of the film. The situation deteriorated so badly that filming slowed to a crawl, with tension on set making it difficult to get through even basic scenes. When Mel Brooks heard about the problems from Spain, he realized that his massive personal investment was in jeopardy because the cast and director couldn't get along. Rather than trying to handle the situation through phone calls or sending representatives, Brooks decided to take dramatic action by personally flying to Spain to confront everyone involved face to face. According to people who were there, Brooks gathered the cast and crew together and delivered an ultimatum in no uncertain terms. Either everyone would put aside their differences and get back to work immediately, or he would fire every single person on the production and shut the whole thing down. It was a desperate move from a producer who had already mortgaged his house and invested millions of his own money, and he wasn't about to let personality conflicts destroy his investment. The threat apparently worked well enough to get filming back on track, though the underlying tensions never fully disappeared. Fact 5. It was sold with a Star Wars-style trailer. After Solarbabies finally wrapped production following all its disasters and delays, Mel Brooks faced yet another major problem. He couldn't find a distributor willing to release the film in theaters. Studios and distributors who saw early cuts of the movie weren't impressed, and they had serious doubts about whether audiences would show up for a weird post-apocalyptic rollerskating adventure featuring a cast of unknown teenage actors and a glowing alien sphere. Brooks was sitting on a $25 million film that nobody wanted to distribute, which meant all his personal investment would be completely lost if he couldn't get it into theaters. In a last-ditch effort to make the movie seem more commercial and marketable, Brooks decided to cut together a special 10-minute trailer that was deliberately styled to look and feel like the promotional materials for Star Wars. This wasn't subtle. He was openly trying to make Solarbabies seem like it had the same kind of epic science fiction adventure appeal that had made Star Wars a massive hit. The trailer emphasized the desert landscapes, the futuristic settings, the orphans on a heroic journey, and the mysterious glowing orb as if it were some kind of force-like power. Brooks took this flashy trailer to Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was chairman of Walt Disney Studios at the time and one of the most powerful executives in Hollywood. Katzenberg watched the trailer, considered the pitch, and still said no. Paramount wasn't interested in distributing Solarbabies even with the Star Wars-style marketing approach. Brooks eventually found distribution through a smaller company, but Katzenberg's rejection was a clear sign that industry insiders recognized this movie was going to be a very tough sell to audiences. Fact 6. Released same day as Star Trek IV. The disastrous release strategy for Solarbabies somehow managed to make an already bad situation even worse through spectacularly poor timing. MGM and United Artists, who eventually agreed to distribute the film, decided to open Solarbabies nationwide on November 26, 1986, which fell the day before Thanksgiving. On the surface, this might have seemed like decent counter-programming during the holiday moviegoing season, but there was one enormous problem. They were releasing it on the exact same day as Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, which was one of the most highly anticipated films of the entire year. The Star Trek franchise was at the peak of its popularity in the mid-1980s, and the fourth film featured the beloved crew traveling back in time to 1980s San Francisco to save humpback whales, which was a premise that had generated massive buzz among both fans and general audiences. Film critics immediately recognized what a terrible idea it was to put Solarbabies up against Star Trek, and several reviewers openly mocked the decision in their columns. One particularly memorable review included the sarcastic line, "Better pray for a pox on Spock, guys," suggesting that the only way Solarbabies could possibly succeed was if something catastrophic happened to prevent people from seeing Star Trek instead. The competition was absolutely brutal. Star Trek IV went on to earn over $130 million and became the highest-grossing Star Trek film up to that point, while Solarbabies was completely buried at the box office. It's hard to imagine a worse release date unless they had opened it directly against a Star Wars sequel or E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Fact 7. The pitch was a slideshow with random kids. The origin story of how Solarbabies got greenlit in the first place is almost as bizarre as the movie itself, and it starts with one of the most unusual pitch meetings in Hollywood history. Douglas Metrov, the screenwriter who conceived the story, didn't walk into Mel Brooks' office with a traditional script or even a detailed verbal pitch. Instead, he brought along a 12-minute slideshow presentation that he had created specifically to sell Brooks on the concept. This wasn't a professional pitch deck with concept art or storyboards created by experienced illustrators. Metrov had apparently gone out and found a group of random children, possibly neighborhood kids or friends of friends, and photographed them acting out scenes and poses that represented his vision for the orphaned teenage characters in the post-apocalyptic world. The slides showed these kids in various action poses, group formations, and dramatic situations that were meant to convey the story of young rollerskating rebels fighting against an oppressive regime in a waterless desert wasteland. Metrov narrated his way through this slideshow, explaining the plot, the themes, and his vision for how it would all come together as an exciting science fiction adventure film. Incredibly, this homemade presentation with random children was enough to convince Mel Brooks that this was a project worth pursuing. Brooks was apparently so impressed by the passion and creativity behind the pitch, and perhaps by the unique visual approach that Metrov had taken, that he decided to greenlight the project and bring it into development through his production company. It's a reminder of how unpredictable the Hollywood development process can be. Sometimes a multi-million-dollar movie starts with nothing more than a slideshow featuring kids from someone's neighborhood. Fact 8. Three-time Oscar winner composed the score. Despite all the problems plaguing Solarbabies during production and the concerns about whether it would find an audience, the film managed to attract at least one element of genuine world-class talent, Maurice Jarre, who was hired to compose the musical score. Jarre wasn't just any film composer looking for work. He was one of the most celebrated and respected musicians in the entire history of cinema, having won 3 Academy Awards for Best Original Score over the course of his legendary career. His first Oscar came for Lawrence of Arabia in 1962, where his sweeping orchestral themes perfectly captured the epic scope of David Lean's desert masterpiece. He won his second Oscar for Dr. Zhivago in 1965, creating one of the most recognizable and romantic film scores ever written, including the famous Lara's theme that became a worldwide hit. His third Academy Award came for A Passage to India in 1984, just 2 years before Solarbabies, proving that he was still at the top of his craft in the 1980s. Jarre had also composed scores for other major films, like Witness, Dead Poets Society. and Ghost, so his involvement with Solarbabies represented a significant coup for the production. The filmmakers were clearly hoping that Jara's musical genius could elevate the material and add an emotional depth that might help audiences connect with the story. Unfortunately, even a 3-time Oscar winner's beautiful compositions couldn't save Solarbabies from being a critical and commercial disaster. Jara did his job professionally and delivered a score that was far better than the movie deserved, but great music alone cannot rescue a troubled production with fundamental problems in its script, direction, and concept. Fact 9. Jason Patric and Jamie Gertz's first on-screen romance. One of the more interesting pieces of casting trivia about Solarbabies involves the romantic pairing of Jason Patric and Jamie Gertz, who played Jason and Tara, two orphaned teenagers who develop feelings for each other while fighting against the oppressive protectorate regime. This was actually the first time these two actors had been cast as love interests in a film, marking the beginning of an on-screen chemistry that would be utilized again very soon afterward. Both Patric and Gertz were relatively early in their careers at this point. Patric had appeared in some television movies but was still establishing himself as a film actor, while Gertz had been working steadily in television and smaller film roles without yet breaking through to major stardom. Their pairing in Solarbabies didn't generate much attention because the movie itself was such a commercial failure that barely anyone saw it in theaters. However, just 1 year later in 1987, both actors were cast in Joel Schumacher's The Lost Boys, which became a major cult hit and one of the defining vampire movies of the 1980s. In The Lost Boys, Patric played Michael Emerson, a teenage boy who gets drawn into a vampire gang, while Gertz played Star, a half-vampire who becomes Michael's love interest, and their on-screen chemistry worked much better in that context. The Lost Boys is the film that everyone actually remembers from their early careers, while Solarbabies has been largely forgotten except by die-hard fans of obscure 1980s science fiction. It's fascinating that these two actors went from playing dystopian rebels on roller skates to playing vampire-adjacent teenagers in such quick succession, and only the second pairing left any lasting cultural impact whatsoever. Fact 10. The deaf character gets his hearing back. One of the stranger plot elements in Solarbabies involves the character of Daniel, the youngest member of the orphaned roller skating group, who is played by child actor Lucas Haas in one of his earliest film roles. Daniel is established from the beginning of the movie as being completely deaf, and the other characters communicate with him using sign language throughout the early scenes, which adds an interesting layer to the group dynamics. The mystical alien sphere called Bodhi, which becomes the central MacGuffin of the entire plot, possesses seemingly unlimited healing and transformative powers that the characters gradually discover as the story progresses. During one pivotal scene, Daniel has a direct encounter with Bodhi, where he physically touches the glowing orb, and the sphere's mysterious energy miraculously restores his hearing, allowing him to hear sounds for the first time in his life. This is presented as a wonderful, magical moment where Daniel experiences the world in a completely new way and can finally communicate verbally with his friends. However, the movie then creates a very awkward situation where Daniel has to continue pretending to be deaf around the authorities and guards at the orphanage, because revealing that he can suddenly hear would raise impossible-to-answer questions about how this miraculous cure occurred. The film doesn't really explore the psychological complexity of this situation or what it would actually be like for someone to have their hearing restored and then have to hide that fact from most people around them. It's one of several plot points in Solarbabies that feels half-developed, where an interesting concept gets introduced but never fully thought through in terms of its implications or consequences. Fact 11. Dom DeLuise's son was a Solarbaby. Among the ensemble cast of young actors playing the orphaned Solarbabies was Peter DeLuise, who took on the role of Tug, one of the rebellious teenagers fighting against the water-hoarding protectorate. What many viewers didn't realize at the time, and what isn't immediately obvious from watching the film, is that Peter DeLuise is the son of Dom DeLuise, the beloved comedian and character actor who appeared in numerous Mel Brooks films including Blazing Saddles, Silent Movie, and History of the World Part 1. Dom DeLuise was known for his incredibly expressive face, his gift for physical comedy, and his ability to steal scenes with his over-the-top performances. So it's interesting that his son ended up in a Mel Brooks production, even though this one turned out to be far less successful than his father's collaborations with Brooks. Peter DeLuise didn't follow his father's path toward comedy performance. Instead, he carved out his own successful career in television, becoming best known for playing Officer Doug Penhall on the hit series 21 Jump Street alongside Johnny Depp from 1987 to 1991. After his acting career, Peter transitioned into directing and became a prolific television director, helming numerous episodes of the Stargate franchise, including Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, and Stargate Universe, where he directed well over 100 episodes total. He's remained active in the science fiction television world for decades, building a reputation as a reliable and creative director. While Solarbabies was certainly not the highlight of his resume, it was part of his early journey in the entertainment industry before he found his true calling behind the camera. Fact 12. Future Heroes star in early role. Another notable cast member who appeared in Solarbabies early in his career was Adrian Pasdar, who played Darstar, one of the villainous characters aligned with the oppressive protectorate regime that controls all the water in this dystopian future. Darstar is portrayed as a skilled and dangerous enforcer who serves as one of the primary antagonists chasing the orphaned heroes throughout their journey across the desert wasteland. 4. Pasdar, this role came at the very beginning of his film career. He had just made his movie debut earlier that same year in 1986 with a small role in Top Gun, the massive Tom Cruise action hit that became one of the biggest movies of the decade. Solarbabies was essentially his second film role, giving him an opportunity to play a more prominent character even though the movie itself didn't find the audience that everyone hoped for. Pasdar continued working steadily in film and television throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, appearing in various projects without quite breaking through to major stardom. His career took a significant turn in 2006 when he was cast as Nathan Petrelli in NBC's Heroes, a science fiction drama series about ordinary people discovering they have extraordinary abilities. Nathan was a complex character, a congressman and later senator who could fly, but who struggled with moral compromises and family loyalty throughout the show's run. Heroes became a cultural phenomenon during its first season, and Pasdar's performance as the morally ambiguous politician was one of the highlights that kept audiences engaged through the series' four-season run. Fact 13. British comedy legend as bounty hunter. The cast of Solarbabies included an interesting bit of international casting with Alexei Sayle, a British comedian and actor who took on the role of Malice, a bounty hunter character pursuing the orphaned heroes through the desert wasteland. Sayle was already well known in the United Kingdom as one of the stars of The Young Ones, a groundbreaking alternative comedy sitcom that aired on BBC Two from 1982 to 1984 and became a cult classic that influenced an entire generation of British comedy. In The Young Ones, Sayle played various characters, including the Balowski family members who appeared as the disgusting landlord and his relatives, and his aggressive, energetic comedy style made him one of the most recognizable faces in British alternative comedy during the 1980s. For American audiences, however, Sayle was largely unknown, which meant his appearance in Solarbabies didn't carry the same recognition factor that it might have for viewers in Britain. Sayle has never been shy about expressing his opinions on the projects he's been involved with, and decades later on his podcast in 2024, he openly called Solarbabies a disaster, joining the long list of people associated with the production who recognized that things had gone badly wrong. His willingness to candidly discuss the film's failure is refreshing compared to actors who try to put a positive spin on every project they've worked on, regardless of the results. Sayle continued his career in British comedy, appearing in various television shows, films, and stand-up performances, and he's written several novels as well. But Solarbabies remains one of the more obscure entries on his resume. Fact 14. It eventually broke even. Somehow, the theatrical release of Solarbabies was an unmitigated financial disaster by any reasonable measure, with the film earning only approximately $1.6 million at the domestic box office against its bloated production budget of $25 million. That's not even counting the additional millions spent on marketing and distribution, which means the theatrical run lost over $23 million before even factoring in those extra costs. For Mel Brooks, who had invested $9 million of his own money and mortgaged his house to finance the production, this appeared to be the financial catastrophe that everyone had feared. The film disappeared from theaters quickly and seemed destined to be remembered only as one of the biggest flops of the 1980s and a cautionary tale about runaway productions. However, in a twist that seems almost impossible to believe, Brooks later claimed in interviews that Solarbabies eventually managed to break even financially after many years of generating revenue through home video sales and DVD releases. During the late 1980s and throughout the 1990s, the home video market became incredibly lucrative for films that had failed theatrically, as rental stores needed inventory, and consumers were willing to take chances on movies they had missed in theaters. Brooks described the film's eventual break-even status as a miracle, acknowledging that it took many years of steady home video income to gradually chip away at the massive losses. Whether Solarbabies truly recouped its entire production budget, plus marketing costs, is difficult to verify without access to the actual financial records. But Brooks's claim suggests that the long tail of video distribution was more powerful than anyone expected at the time. Fact 15. Only 2 films for the director. Alan Johnson's feature film directing career is remarkably brief and bookended by 2 Mel Brooks productions that couldn't have been more different in their reception and legacy. Johnson's first film as a director was the 1983 remake of To Be or Not to Be, which starred Brooks himself alongside his wife Anne Bancroft in a story about a Polish theater company during World War II performing for the Nazis. That film received mixed reviews, but was generally regarded as a respectable effort, showing that Johnson could handle directing actors and staging scenes competently even if he wasn't revolutionizing cinema. His second and final feature film as a director was Solarbabies 3 years later in 1986, and it proved to be a box office bomb and critical failure that essentially ended his directing career before it had really begun. After the disaster of Solarbabies, Johnson made the decision to return to his roots as a choreographer, which is where he had built his reputation in the first place, before Brooks gave him the opportunity to direct. Johnson had worked as a choreographer on several previous Brooks films and had earned respect for his ability to stage musical numbers and movement sequences, so returning to that world must have felt like coming home after the nightmare of Solarbabies. He continued working as a choreographer for stage productions and occasionally for film and television. But he never attempted to direct another feature film for the rest of his career. It's a reminder of how one major failure in Hollywood can effectively close doors that seem to be opening, especially for directors who don't have a strong track record or powerful industry connections to fall back on when things go wrong.